Welcome to our deep dive into Pachinko by Min Jin Lee.
You know, for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read this sweeping saga yet, but wants to understand what makes it so captivating,
This is for you.
we're going to break it all down.
Exactly. We'll explore the characters, the themes, the historical backdrop, all the elements that make Pachinko such an unforgettable read.
So think of us as your guides.
To this incredible multi-generational story about a Korean family's journey.
Across most of the 20th century.
It starts in a small fishing village in Korea under Japanese rule,
And follows them as they migrate to Japan.
facing immense challenges along the way.
It's a story about love, family, sacrifice, and resilience, but ultimately...
It's about identity.
And, you know, the title itself, Pachinko, is more than just a catchy name.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a brilliant metaphor for the family's unpredictable journey.
I love that. It's like that little silver ball bouncing through the maze of pins.
Exactly. Their lives are a mix of chance, skill, and navigating a system often rigged against them.
Okay, so speaking of unpredictable, the book opens with a detail that just drew me right in.
Oh, yeah.
We meet Hooni, the family patriarch, and learn he was born with a deformed leg.
Right.
And what struck me was his determination to give his daughter, Sunja, a better life, despite his own struggles.
You know, it's fascinating how Hooni's disability isn't just a physical trait.
Yeah.
It shapes his entire outlook on life, his understanding of hardship, and his deep love for Sunja.
It makes you wonder how his experiences shaped him.
He understands what it means to be overlooked, to be marginalized, and he instills in Sunja this incredible resilience.
Almost like a survival skill.
Exactly, because he knows she'll need it.
And she does.
Oh, absolutely.
The story takes a huge turn when Sunja becomes pregnant out of wedlock,
Oh, wow.
bringing immense shame upon her family and their small village.
And here's where understanding the historical and societal context is so important.
For sure.
We're talking about Korea in the early 1900s,
Right?
where the stigma surrounding an unwed mother was incredibly harsh.
It wasn't just a personal matter, was it?
No, it could ostracize an entire family, limit their prospects, their social standing. It was life-altering.
So Sunja faces this impossible choice.
Right.
She decides to migrate to Japan with a young minister.
Leaving behind everything she knows.
This act of migration becomes a central theme in the book, doesn't it?
It does.
Pachinko shows us how global events, wars, political shifts, social upheavals directly impact the lives of everyday people.
Absolutely. Forcing them to make incredibly difficult choices.
We see this play out as the family navigates a new world,
A new culture.
trying to carve out a space for themselves.
In a society that doesn't exactly welcome them.
Right. And speaking of navigating this new world, we have to talk about Kohansu.
Oh, such a complex character.
He becomes deeply intertwined with Sunja's life.
As both her lover and as a powerful figure in the Korean underworld of Japan.
Talk about adding another layer of complexity to an already complex situation.
Kohansu really embodies the moral ambiguities the family faces.
In what way?
He's charming, charismatic.
He offers Sunja a kind of security and protection that she desperately needs given her circumstances. But at the same time, he's unable to fully commit to her.
Right.
He's bound by his own position within this Korean community in Japan and the social constraints of that world.
He represents that gray area, doesn't he?
He does.
That tension between survival and desire.
Yes, exactly.
That Sunja and later her children have to grapple with.
Absolutely.
The family's life in Japan is this constant uphill battle.
It is.
Marked by poverty, discrimination, and the constant effort to build a life.
In a society that sees them as outsiders.
This is where the book sheds light on the experiences of a specific group. Zenichi Koreans.
Right, these are ethnic Koreans who migrated to Japan.
Many during the early 20th century.
When Korea was under Japanese rule.
They faced intense prejudice, weren't they?
They were.
Often relegated to the fringes of society.
They had to create their own communities and support systems just to survive.
So their story, their history, is woven into the fabric of Pachinko.
It allows us, as readers, to understand the lasting impacts of historical events on ordinary people.
Exactly, and how these events echo through generations.
Shaping identities, dreams, and even relationships.
Yes, and as we move deeper into the family story, we meet Sunja's sons, Noah and Mozasu.
Right.
They grow up with vastly different dreams and ambitions, reflecting the changing times and the complexities of being Zenichi Korean in post-war Japan.
And that's where it gets really interesting. We see these two brothers grappling with their heritage in such different ways.
We do.
Noah seeking assimilation, pursuing academic success, and striving for a life outside the Korean community.
Right.
While Mosasu embraces his Korean identity.
Absolutely.
Finding success in the very industry the book is named after, Pachinko.
And that choice to enter the pachinko industry speaks volumes.
Oh, how so?
Even today, pachinko parlors in Japan occupy a complex space.
I see.
It's a hugely popular form of entertainment, yet often viewed as somewhat disreputable, operating in a legal gray area.
So Mosasu's path reflects a willingness to embrace a part of his culture that's often marginalized, even while striving for success within it.
Exactly.
Makes you think about what it means to belong.
Yeah.
To define your own identity in a world that tries to put you in a box.
It's a struggle, isn't it?
It is, and that's something I think we can all relate to on some level.
Absolutely.
That struggle to figure out where we fit in.
To reconcile our heritage with our ambitions.
Especially when those things seem to be in conflict.
Pachinko doesn't offer easy answers.
It doesn't.
It encourages us to consider the complexities of identity and belonging in a globalized world.
A world where cultures clash and histories collide.
Yes, and individuals are constantly navigating these intersections.
So as we move into the next part of this deep dive, keep those questions in mind.
Okay.
Think about what resonates with you, what challenges your assumptions, the family's journey.
Oh, it's far from over.
We'll be back soon to unpack even more of this incredible story.
You know, as we delve deeper into the family's story in Japan, it's impossible to ignore the lingering impact of the war.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
It is, and I'm not just talking about the physical rebuilding, but the psychological scars, the trauma.
How people cope with loss and the disruption of their entire lives.
Exactly.
We see this so clearly with Yoseb.
Sunja's husband.
He suffers terribly from injuries he got during the atomic bombing of Nagasaki.
And his decline is heartbreaking to witness.
He becomes a shell of his former self.
Both physically and emotionally.
Struggling to find his place in a world that's been completely changed.
And his suffering really impacts the whole family dynamic.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. And Kungi, Yoseb's sister-in-law, she steps up in incredible ways.
Oh yeah, Kungi, she's amazing.
She really is. She becomes this pillar of strength for everyone.
Taking care of everything and everyone.
Even taking on work at the family restaurant to make ends meet.
The restaurant. It's owned by Kim Chang-ho.
Right. Such an interesting character.
He employs Sunja, becomes a sort of father figure to Noah.
And even has this complicated, unspoken relationship with Kungi.
It's like the restaurant becomes more than just a place to eat.
It just doesn't.
It's this microcosm of the Korean community in Osaka.
This network of support.
People sharing meals, stories.
Finding ways to survive.
In a society that often pushes them aside.
But survival so often requires difficult choices.
It does.
And as Sunja faces mounting financial stress.
Especially with Noah wanting to go to university.
She's forced to make a decision that really tests her.
Her pride and her independence.
And that's when Ko Han-soo comes back into the picture.
He does, and it's such a pivotal moment, isn't it?
It is. Remember, he offered Sunja security years ago.
Right.
But she chose a different path.
And now...
Now she has to swallow her pride and ask him for help.
Wow.
She has to acknowledge the reality of her situation and the limitations she faces as a Korean woman in Japan.
It's a real turning point for their relationship.
It is.
It's an acknowledgement of their shared history and how circumstances can force even the strongest people to rely on others.
And Hansu's reaction is so telling.
How so?
He doesn't hesitate to help, not just financially, but he takes a personal interest in Noah's success.
Really?
He takes him to fancy dinners, celebrates his academic achievements, wants him to have opportunities that weren't available to Koreans a generation earlier.
It's like he's trying to make up for lost time.
In a way, perhaps.
But Noah's success comes at a price, doesn't it?
It does.
He gets accepted to Waseda University.
This prestigious institution in Tokyo.
But he becomes increasingly aware of the prejudice he faces.
It's like he can't escape his Korean identity no matter how hard he tries to assimilate.
That's a struggle that many Zenichi Koreans face.
Absolutely. No matter their accomplishments, their education, their fluency in Japanese.
They were still seen as outsiders.
Othered by a society that valued homogeneity and conformity above all else.
It's a stark reminder of the complexities of belonging, isn't it? And how systemic prejudice can persist, even as individuals strive to achieve success and acceptance within the dominant culture.
It's a sobering thought. And then we have Mosasu,
Sunja's other son.
Who chooses a completely different path.
Embracing his Korean heritage.
And finding his calling not in academia.
But in the world of Pachinko.
And it's not just a job for him.
It becomes his life, doesn't it?
It does. He immerses himself in the game, learns the business.
The social dynamics.
Even the unspoken rules that govern this seemingly chaotic world.
His journey into that world is fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It reveals this whole other layer of Japanese society.
Pachinko parlors are everywhere.
But they operate in this legal and social gray area.
They're a source of entertainment for millions.
But they're often associated with gambling, organized crime.
This kind of underbelly of society that people tend to ignore.
But within that world, Mozasu finds a sense of belonging.
A community.
And even a mentor in Goro.
Oh, Goro is such a character.
Larger than life.
He seems to know everything and everyone in Osaka's Pachinko scene.
He becomes a surrogate father to Mozasu.
Teaching him not just about Pachinko, but about navigating a world where connections and street smarts are essential for survival.
Goro represents a different kind of success.
One that exists outside the traditional paths.
Outside the corporate ladders and expectations.
And within that world, Mozasu thrives.
He does. He's ambitious, driven.
And unlike Noah, he seems comfortable within the Korean community.
He falls in love with Yumi.
A seamstress with dreams of her own.
And their relationship is so intriguing because it highlights this clash between tradition and ambition.
I see. How so?
Yumi yearns for a different kind of life.
What kind of life?
She wants to go to America.
Really?
She believes it holds the promise of freedom and opportunity.
Wow.
A chance to escape the limitations she faces as a woman in Japan.
So she represents this yearning for something more.
She does.
While Mozasu is rooted in Japan.
He wants to build his Pachinko empire, provide for his family, and make a life in the place where he was born.
Even if it means operating in a world that many view with suspicion.
It's a fascinating contrast, isn't it?
It is. It speaks to how ambition can manifest in different ways.
And how one generation's dreams can clash with the next's.
Especially within immigrant communities where the desire for a better life is so intertwined with the complexities of assimilation and cultural preservation.
And as Mozasu builds his empire, Noah's life takes a dark turn.
Oh no, what happens?
He falls in love with Akiko, a Japanese woman. But their relationship is full of tension.
Why is that?
It exposes another layer of social dynamics at play.
In what way?
Akiko, while she's attracted to Noah, she also fetishizes his Korean identity.
You mean?
Even while benefiting from his social marginalization.
It's a complicated dynamic.
It is, and it reveals how insidious prejudice can be.
How it can warp even seemingly loving relationships.
Exactly, and then it all culminates in this devastating revelation for Noah.
What happens?
He discovers a shocking truth about his past. A secret that shatters his sense of self and sends him on a downward spiral.
This is a pivotal moment in the book, isn't it?
It is. It forces Noah to confront the weight of history.
The secrets his family has kept hidden.
And how those secrets can have profound consequences for future generations.
It's a stark reminder that the past isn't something we simply leave behind.
It shapes who we are.
How we view the world.
The choices we make.
And the consequences of this revelation are huge.
They are.
Noah disappears,
leaving his family devastated.
Sunja is left reeling, grappling with guilt.
The realization that even her sacrifices couldn't protect her son from the pain of his heritage.
And even Hansu, with all his power and connections.
He can't fix this.
It highlights the limitations even the most influential people face when up against the enduring weight of history and prejudice.
It's a reminder that even the strongest bonds can be tested by forces beyond our control.
And as we move into the final act of Pachinko,
we'll see the ripple effects of these choices.
These tragic...
Well, in the next generation. So we left off with Noah's disappearance, leaving this, huge hole in the family.
Yeah, and those secrets from the past, they just keep coming back to haunt them.
They do. And now the story shifts to the 1980s.
Okay.
We meet Solomon.
Mozasu and Yumi's son.
His story is really interesting because it kind of mirrors Noah's in some ways.
Right. But he's also forging his own path.
Exactly like we're seeing the next generation wrestling with those same questions.
Of identity and belonging.
But in a world that's changing so rapidly.
Solomon is brilliant. He goes to Columbia University.
Enters the world of finance.
A world that seems so different from his family's Pachinko roots.
But you know that distance is an illusion.
Is it?
It is, even with his Ivy League education and successful career in America.
Yeah.
Solomon still can't escape those subtle prejudices that still cling to his Korean heritage.
Like no matter how much you achieve.
Upward mobility doesn't erase those complexities of identity.
It's like he achieved the assimilation that Noah wanted so badly.
Yeah. But even in achieving it,
he realizes it's not the answer.
There's still that feeling of not quite belonging.
Not fully American, not fully Japanese.
Exactly, caught between two cultures.
Fluent in both Japanese and English.
Comfortable in both worlds, but not completely embraced by either.
He embodies that hyphenated identity, doesn't he?
He does, the Zainichi American.
This new generation grappling with globalization and their family's past.
And his relationship with Phoebe?
The American woman he falls for.
Adds another layer to this exploration of identity.
Their connection is passionate.
There's this underlying tension.
A clash of perspectives.
That mirrors Solomon's own internal struggles.
It's like their relationship becomes this microcosm of a cultural divides he's trying to bridge.
Exactly.
Phoebe represents that American ideal of success.
The corporate world, ambition, social mobility.
She doesn't understand the Pachinko business.
She sees it as shady, disreputable.
Almost a betrayal of Solomon's potential.
And this clash becomes even more apparent when they visit Japan together.
Oh, interesting.
Solomon is confronted with his family's past, the Pachinko empire Mozasu built.
A world that Phoebe finds so strange.
Unsettling.
It's like they're speaking different languages.
Not just literally, but in how they view the world.
Their definitions of success, family, loyalty.
And Mozasu represents a different kind of resilience.
How so?
One forged in a society that's always marginalized him.
He built his success in the shadows.
Navigating a system that was rigged against him.
And he sees Phoebe's judgment of his world as naive.
Almost a little sad.
It highlights that generational divide, doesn't it?
It does. The different ways each generation had to adapt to survive.
And those compromises.
Those choices made out of necessity.
They come back to haunt Solomon.
They do. He gets caught up in a deal that goes bad.
Exposing the darker side of Gora's Pachinko empire.
Leading to his downfall.
It's a devastating turn of events.
It forces Solomon to confront some hard truths about himself, his ambitions.
The price he's paid for success.
He loses his job. His relationship with Phoebe falls apart. He's left feeling lost.
Stripped of the identity he worked so hard to build.
It's like everything he thought he wanted just crumbles around him.
And in that moment of disillusionment,
he turns to Hana,
a troubled young woman who's been a part of his life since they were kids.
But their connection is more about shared pain than actual love, isn't it?
It is. Hana's life is really a cautionary tale.
It is.
She represents the devastating consequences of societal marginalization.
The cycle of addiction and despair.
That traps those who feel like they don't belong anywhere.
Her death is just heartbreaking.
A reminder of the human cost of prejudice and the scars of historical trauma.
It's like all these experiences, these losses.
They force Solomon to see the truth.
He realizes he's been used.
Tokenized.
Not just in business, but in his relationship with Phoebe, too.
He thought he'd escape those prejudices by going to America.
By achieving success.
But it all comes crashing down.
And then he makes a surprising decision.
He does.
He goes back to Japan.
To work in his father's Pachinko business.
It's not about ambition or money anymore, is it?
No, it's about something deeper.
A need to connect with his roots.
To understand his family's legacy.
To find a sense of belonging that's always eluded him.
It's a beautiful ending to a story that spanned generations and continents.
Solomon's not just accepting a job.
He's accepting a part of himself.
A part of his history that he tried so hard to deny.
And the book leaves us with this sense of hope.
Not a traditional happy ending, but
a belief in the resilience of the human spirit.
Even in the face of hardship and discrimination.
There's this determination to create a life, a legacy.
That defies expectations.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Pachinko,
we invite you to think about what resonated with you.
What insights did you gain?
What questions are you left with?
This story, while rooted in a specific time and place,
speaks to universal themes.
Identity, belonging, the search for meaning.
In a world that often feels chaotic.
And like that little silver ball in a Pachinko machine.
The journey of understanding is never truly over.
There's always another twist, another turn.
Waiting to be explored.
Keep searching for stories that challenge you. Broaden your perspective.
Help you make sense of this complex world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Pachinko.
We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time for another adventure in knowledge.